Hey everybody, welcome back to the third part of our ACES series. It's been a while since I posted the last one, probably almost 2 years ago now. But we're catching up again, and this is Edward's 148 scale Bf109 E3. We're building it in the markings of Josef Priller in 1940, towards the end of 1940, October time. These new Edward kits have got some really nice detail on them. Lovely surface detail, very fine panel lines, rivets and so on. So we'll hopefully bring that out when we do the painting and weathering. Anyway, let's get on with the build. Just cutting the main parts out now. We're starting off with the cockpit as usual. Now previously I've built the Tamiya 109, also an E3. But this is a slightly different league to that. The Tamiya kit goes together really nicely, but this one is far more detailed. And this particular boxing has some photo etch in it, which will add to the detail even more. Just building the cockpit up. We've got some photo etch harnesses in the kit, so I just want to drill out the back of the seat. The shoulder harness on the E series went through the back of the seat rather than over the top. So I'm just cutting this hole out, just tidying it up. Bit of liquid cement just to clear the debris away. This is a slightly fiddly construction of the lower part of the instrument panel. It's actually in 3 parts, so you've got to be careful to get everything aligned properly. And that's more or less what it should look like when it's done. You really just need to make sure that it's square and that the panel itself is vertical. These are the trim wheels, or one of them anyway. There were 2 on the 109. On this kit I would provide a full engine if that's what you want. I don't. And you do actually need to build the block and fit the exhausts and 1 or 2 other bits and pieces to it, even if you're displaying, as I am, the cowlings closed. It's one area that I don't like on the kit really, because you've got to fit the exhaust, as I say, in order to get the engine to fit and stay in place. But that involves masking the exhaust off afterwards before doing the camouflage scheme. So it's not ideal, but if you want the cowlings closed, that's the way to do it. This is another area that I don't like, where you've got to fit the tail wheel strut to sandwich it between the 2 fuselage halves. Actually, I broke this off later on in the build and had to drill it out and pin it. So you'll see that later on anyway when we come to do the final details. Got a photo etch set, as you can see, and the first thing we're going to use from the set is the rudder pedals. So we just have to cut the plastic ones away, get the rudder bar from that and fit it to the photo etch. And we've got a couple of nice little foot straps as well. Let's get everything lined up. You might want to deflect the rudder, in which case you can just adjust the position of the pedals in the footwell. See here the engine block is together, and at this stage we're putting the exhausts in. Which is a pity, as I said, but I can't immediately think of a better way of doing this. I've painted the interior of the cockpit in RLM02, and now I'm just adding some Tamiya brown panel liner. This is over a coat of gloss varnish. I used Tamiya Lacquer LP9 for the gloss. I'm just going to do a pin wash just to get some shadows into the detail. This is some white spirit, or mineral spirits as it's known in the States. That just helps the wash flow a little bit easier. Some dry brushing now just to bring out the highlights. So we've got the shadows with the wash, and now the highlights with some Tamiya acrylic. This is Japanese Army grey. It's just a very pale green which just catches the surface detail nicely. Some photo etch belts, colour printed. With belts, just try to bend them around a little bit. If you just put them on flat, they'll look a little bit false, so just try dress them up a little bit with some bends and twists to them. They just lie a little bit more naturally. It's always a tricky bit, I think, fitting belts once you've painted the seat, because they slip with the CA and you're doing a repaint. But I managed to get away with it on this attempt. Photo etch instrument panel. This is the lower panel on the 109, and it's a two-part panel. Just the dials on the first and then the actual panel overlay. It's important that these are located properly, because these photo etch parts can interfere with the fit of the fuselage halves or the canopy, things like that, if you don't get it right. Just adding a little bit of detail from some lead wire and some brass tube. These are the oxygen pipes. The oxygen bottle's just down on the bottom right of the pilot. The oxygen piping was picked out in blue on German aircraft at this time. And just picking out one or two details. Got some extra cables at the front of the cockpit on the starboard side. Again, that's from lead wire, so it just dresses the whole area up a little bit. And there's the completed work so far. So far so good. Ed would provide in photo etch the chains for the trims, That will be the elevator and rudder trim on those wheels. And the cockpit ready to join the fuselage halves. Now this is where the engine assembly is done. So you've got the actual exhaust pipes, as you can see, holding the engine in place, which isn't ideal, as I said. Get the fuselage taped up, got using some Revel contactor on the main connections, and then just reinforce that with some Tamiya extra thin. We've got the chin radiator as well trapped underneath the engine there. Scribing the panel lines back over the top of the fuselage at this point. I like to use that razor saw. And starting to build up the cowlings as well. Now on 109s, as you probably know already, there was a panel going along the fuselage length, top and bottom, so that needs to be reinstated if you've filled that in. I'm just using some Dymo tape, that's labelling tape. It's quite stiff, so it enables you just to run the saw blade, in this case, along in a nice straight line to give us that panel line. Clean off any burrs and go back in just to clean the panel line out. Can use a bit of liquid cement to help do that. Now to build up the wings, and starting with the undercarriage bays, the main gear bays. All pre-painted and dry brushed for some highlighting. Some nice detail in there as well. Wings are a simple job to put together, nice fit. These are the leading edge slats, which are displayed slightly deployed. You can see here separate ailerons, and we've got the flaps as well, which will be fitted in a slightly drooped position. Using a sanding sponge, just some Tamiya sanding sponge taped to a stick, and that just helps preserve the curve on the leading edge rather than a hard sander. Wings are a really nice fit, particularly that join at the back here where it joins onto the fuselage. Just setting the dihedral. Left to its own devices, it can sag a little bit and open up a bit of a gap on the wing root. And I'm using a burner clamp here to just tighten the wing up into the fuselage from the underside. The yellow on the cowling at this point is just so that I can fit the cowling guns rather than try to paint round them. And we've moved on to paint the rest of the cowling. There's some debate in some circles about the extent of the yellow on the nose of this aircraft. No one's sure, and I've just gone with my best guess from the photographs that I've got. Building the undercarriage, a fairly simple job. Again, the detail in the kit extends to the brake line down the front, and I've just added to that a little bit later on in the build with some wire just to extend that brake line. Got the RLM 65 on and the RLM 70 now. So you've just marked out the splinter camouflage. RLM 71 on there, and the masking gives us that splinter on the wings and the tailplane, of course. Gloss coat just to seal that work in, and here I've just free-handed some RLM 02 onto the wings, trying to follow the pattern as close as I could to the photographs. Just be careful to make sure that the pattern matches onto the flaps. Got quite a heavy mottle on the side of the aircraft, which I've tried to reproduce here with a mixture of all three camouflage colours, all the three greens, including some RLM02 in there as well. And a final gloss coat ready for the decals. I haven't covered the decaling in this video, but I've done plenty of that before. These Eduard decals are the older style, not the, what I think are fairly problematic, newer style of Eduard decal. These went on really nicely. I think the transition came in about 2020 when they started to use the newer style of decal with the very broad carrier film on them. Starting to do a bit of weathering now on the airframe, and this is AK weathering wash for brown and green camouflage. It's basically a brown, dark brown enamel wash. And there's an equivalent one for grey and blue, which I'm using on the underside on the RLM 65. Just in the panel lines. It's not really a general wash. The AK wash is really nice for playing around with the cotton bud. As you can see in this part, you can move it, use it to stain the paintwork, drag it and streak it. It's really very versatile. I like the AK wash a lot. You can more or less remove it all if you're not happy with it, or add some more if you need some more staining. So just streaking the wash now on the wing. So just play around with it until you're happy with the level of grime on the aircraft. And that's all ready. Sometimes you can apply another coat of varnish over the top to seal the washes in, but I didn't bother in this particular case. I've given the whole model a coat of Tamiya semi-gloss varnish, LP24 I think it is. I use lacquers wherever I can. I really like the way that the lacquers spray, the Tamiya lacquers spray. Bit of assembly now, starting with the rudder. And just touching in the surround to the cockpit where the masking hasn't quite done the job. Some really nice tabs on these stabilizers to align them. And of course on the E we've got the tailplane struts. These were dispensed with for the F model. Personally, I think the F is the most pleasing looking of the 109 series. I think it was at its sort of aesthetic best with the F. But the E's got plenty of character to it, and it's actually years since I've built a 109E, so this is, for me, quite a nice change. I know that lots of people build them, but it's one of my first for many years. Eduard provides masks for all the glazing, which is really handy, and they're a really nice fit as well. Saves a lot of time. Just using some canopy glue, some Formula 500 canopy glue. Building up the radiators. Now, one thing with the radiator housing when painting is that I just tack them in place so that the paintwork matches and the weathering matches when you come to reassemble them at this point. If you don't do that, it's very difficult to match the blue up, and it looks like an add-on if you don't do it that way. Flaps on. These are a really positive fit. It's virtually impossible to get them at different angles. You notice that I've rolled some paper around the fuselage. That's just because that's where you're going to be holding the model for the detail fitting. And even clean hands carry too much grease in them for a flat paintwork. So I just wrap that towel around just to protect the paintwork as I'm doing the last bits of assembly. Putting the undercarriage together. Nice positive fit that sets the correct angles of the undercarriage, which is important on a 109. It's a very peculiar stance. Kind of splayed out. As you can see, the actual wheelbase, if you like, was very narrow at the fuselage, so that splay just helped give a little bit more stability on the ground. But it must have been an awkward aircraft to manoeuvre at any sort of speed on the ground. Just be careful to get that angle correct. Now, I'm fitting the guns afterwards. I've modified the assembly sequence. The instructions have you fitting these as you're putting the wings together and trapping the guns in between the wing halves, but I didn't like that idea, so I just cut the plug off and fitted them later on in the build. Some decals on the props and just making sure that they're all at the same distance from the hub. It's difficult to judge that by eye. Bit of detail on the hub, which is exposed on an E. A very distinctive spinner. There was an alternative style where the hole at the front of the spinner was filled in, but it's a fairly rare sight. So we're getting there slowly. I'm using some rod here. This is Albion Alloys nickel silver rod, 0.1mm. and that's to just fit I'm just using that to fit the rudder cables. Edward provided a photo etch part for this, but it's flat and doesn't represent the cable very well, so the nickel silver rod does a better job of that. Very fine rod which does a good job. On the running now, just the open canopy. The E3 had the rounded top to the main canopy as opposed to the square version which was fitted from the E4 onwards. Fitting an open canopy on a 109 is a bit tricky, so I'm just using some blue tack here, or white tack in this case, and that will just support the canopy whilst the canopy glue dries. It's not an instant dry with PVA, so you do need to give it that support with the blue tack and leave it to dry. The assembly is reinforced with the retaining bar and spring, which is also provided in the kit. It's a nice touch. Picking the nav lights out with some Tamiya lacquer gloss aluminium to start with, and then just overlay that with some clear red and clear green. The silver just adds a nice sparkle underneath the clear colour. The most delicate part on a 109, any 109, are the aileron mass balances. You've always got to be conscious that these are there. If you pick the model up carelessly, you're almost bound to snap these off. Using some elastic thread, a very fine elastic thread for the aerial, just secured with a bit of CA. And we've got the tensioner at the front. That's just a piece of fine brass tube. Which I'll paint black in a moment. And finally the isolator at the back of the aerial lead, and there she is, all done. So that was a really nice build. It only took about 5 days to put that together, just as a bit of a break from the F14s that I've got on the bench, and it's given a nice result. It's a nice kit. So thanks for looking in, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your modelling at the moment, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.